Alright, folks. Comrades here, aka Silly Cyber, and welcome back to the Mrrshan POUNCERS, Master of Orion 1. Uh, this is a game showing what I think is some of the potential for a more aggressive strategy in the early game in Master of Orion 1, and in particular, the idea of waiting for the enemy AI to colonize planets on your frontier for you. That is, not the backline worlds, but the planets in between you and their home stars. Let them colonize first and then pounce on it, rather than you being the one to overreach and spend all those resources on colony ships early on, only to get it snagged from you because you couldn't afford to send along an adequate escort along with it. Um, so we already did successfully pounce on one enemy planet. That's Paranar there. It's the white star in the nebula. That is an ultra-rich minimal planet. It started out at 30 pop with plus 20 terraforming. It's now at 50 pop. So gotta admit, it's pretty nice having uh, a ultra-rich planet. I'm not gonna lie, to in the early game, lets you you know boost, put money into reserve to boost the other planets along. You can build ships so much more easily with that planet. So really nice planet to have. We pounced on it just in time to take it while it only had 16 population and 16 factories. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't started my research on range 4 tech right away, basically at the start of the game, because it was, I want to say, like 2316 by the time it got colonized, and pounced on it just a few turns later. So that was a huge stroke of. It was also a huge stroke of luck. One, that we were able to do that and get in before they had built any missile bases, which I sent one. Oh, here's our first council vote, by the way. I was thankful to see that I was not nominated. It's between the Silicoids and the Sakra, which that's good for us if we're doing an aggressive strategy, because we might step on some toes and people will not like us. Um, and it's good that we're not facing a council vote. And plus, it looks like as long as it's between the Silicoids and the Sakra, the galaxy is pretty evenly divided between them. Um, where the Bullrathi, I think, like the Sakra, and then the Alkari and the Klakons like the Silicoids. So, there's not a clear winner there. The vote should be pretty evenly split. So that's good for us so far. And you see, we're already at war with the Klakons because I had to take Paranar from them, that ultra-rich world. And here's me trying futilely to chase off this colony ship. Unfortunately, it's armed with a laser, I later found out. And there's nothing you can actually do, apparently, in this situation. I thought that waiting it out and trying to elude the enemy ship with my superior, movement 2 ship um, would actually chase the colony ship away, but apparently they still get a chance to colonize it, even if you were there first with your own ship. Even if you don't retreat, they get the option of colonizing. Pretty weird. Didn't know that was there, that mechanic. But after all this time trying to outlast them, which I did, it was all for nothing because they got to colonize that world anyways. That was the Silicoids, by the way, and they colonized Centauri there just now with that. So they are definitely encroaching on my borders. Here's the latest Klakon menace hitting that advanced ultra-rich world of Paranar, which is in a nebula, which can be good and bad, depending on what you're up against. For now, I think it's good, because I'm not using shielding, and I'm not relying on missile bases, so my ships will be hitting for full firepower here. And basically, what we're up against are some missile boats, those medium ships. I think they're firing slow Hyper X or Hyper V missiles, which it's a good thing they're using the 5 rack and not the 2 rack, because You know, the 2 rack could actually hit me and do some damage. The 5 rack, I can, well, I got hit there, but it doesn't really matter because I also brought that little laser fighter along to distract them a little bit. And yeah, I'm gonna have an easy time cleaning up those laser fighters. No problem about that. I am gonna try to whittle down those those missile boats, though. So because if they build up into large numbers, then they can become a problem. Right now, they're not too dangerous. Um, and so we clear that up. But yeah, so right now, you know, we're just trying to fend off the Clacons, and you know, I'm still using that one large ship that I started out with to claim Paranar. That's still the linchpin of the defense there, although I also have some 2-mover heavy laser cruisers there that can do some, what I like to call the shoot and scoot, where you shoot, and then if you have a missile that you haven't used yet, which is a good idea to always throw one cheap missile onto your ships, you can then scoot away, let them approach you, shoot again. By the way, you saw there the Sakra discovered a derelict, basically an artifacts planet that gives them super advanced technology, as if the Sakra weren't ahead already enough in population. Now they're going to be ahead in technology, which thankfully we haven't met them yet. They're apparently on the other side of the galaxy, but we will be meeting them eventually, I'm sure. So apparently I thought the Clacons were going to colonize that tundra world up to the northeast. They must not have controlled tundra yet. I guess they were just scouting it because they didn't settle it, which is actually kind of a shame because I was looking forward to pouncing on that because I think I just got control dead. So I guess I'll have to go ahead and colonize it myself. Or I either just got control dead or I'm just about to, I think. I forget which one it is. But I was actually kind of hoping they would save me the effort of building my own colony ship. Which, as Sula pointed out on the Realms Beyond forums, colony ships are not really that expensive, but hey, it's about the cost of another combat cruiser. So, you know, if you can save on building a colony ship, that means one extra combat cruiser you get to play around with, and sometimes that can make all the difference. You know, if I would have never gotten Paranar if I had been building a colony ship rather than, you know, a combat cruiser. Which actually, in fact, the Clacons colonized Paranar in the early game before I even had a chance to build either. But I was already, you know, if they had been a little bit later on colonizing Paranar, it wouldn't have made a difference. I would have, according to the strategy, held off from colonizing it on my own, and instead invested that into, you know, an escort that could then reclaim and hold the planet against their ensuing attacks, as I've had to do here. So now I've finally got a missile base up on Paranar, and they've brought a new ship along to the fight, that large there. But thankfully, it's mostly a missile boat. It's got some slow missiles, and I think maybe one laser. Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. And then those little fighters are just more laser fighters too. So, and thankfully, you know, if you have one laser fighter stack, they'll tend to, since they think that that's the weakest ship, you know, the most vulnerable to being destroyed, they'll oftentimes attack that with their missiles, leaving your real threat, you know, your large cruisers, unmolested. So, see, I'm doing making pretty good work right there. It's nice having the initiative with the high attack bonus, because anytime the enemy closes in on you, you still get kind of a first defensive strike. So, yeah, so we cleaned them up again. So we've maxed out our worlds. And getting Paranar to do reserve spending so that it can help poor Signy, industrialize a little more quickly. Which basically, a poor planet, if it's being fed reserves is basically the equivalent of a normal planet. So that's kind of a way you can equalize. As Sula pointed out, it's better to have a rich world and a poor world rather than have all normal worlds, because you can, after the initial industrialization, you can specialize each. The poor world is just as good at research as a normal world, and then you can devote the rich world to building ships. So it's well worth it to get those rich worlds. They make a huge difference. And really, it might be a fair criticism that maybe this game isn't the most representative of the strategy, thanks to the fact that I did happen to have an ultra rich world close by that I could grab. But hey, I had to be aggressive to grab it, so that's part of the strategy right there, right? A more relaxed play style, or a play style that focuses more on early expansion would have not been in a position to seize it at that critical early juncture, because they wouldn't have had range 4 tech so early, and maybe been willing to build the cruiser necessary to go claim it. And then once it gets missile bases up, well, at that point in the game, good luck getting it back, right? So we pounced on it just in time. Now, what am I doing here? What's my strategy? Here we got controlled dead finally, so I'm definitely going to colonize the 2 northern planets. There's a tundra to the northeast, and then a dead world to the northwest, both size 50. Not rich or anything, just normal. So that's that. And I've been waiting for inertial stabilizer to pop. It's been in about 40% for about 5 turns now. I'm getting really unlucky with that. My original plan at this point was to build a bunch of nuclear bombers, and once I got inertial stabilizer, which would give me 3 movement, and then I'd go after, see here, I'm designing my dead colony base, and then I'd go after the Klakons and take their secondary world, since I'm still at war with them. But as we'll see, my plans change a little bit, thanks to the fact that I managed to get the Klakons to sign a peace with me. Finally, inertial stabilizer. I get sublight drives ready for the next rung. Eventually, if I remember correctly, which, by the way, in case you can't tell, this is after game commentary using sped up footage. I'm not playing it live right now this quickly. So if I remember correctly, I think the Klakons ended up signing a peace with me, which I was happy to accept, because I think just a few turns before that, the Silicoids and the Alkari declared war on me. And so suddenly, I don't have to take planets from the Klakons. I can go after the other 2 if need be. And I do have the range to reach some of their world. You can see there's Andoria there, kind of in the southeast, in purple. And the Silicoid worlds are down to the south in blue. And there's one in particular, it's barely within range. It's a size 65 ocean planet that the Silicoids claimed, that I start gearing up to claim at this point. Start thinking about building some nuclear bombers and some ships to escort them. So, but first I build some of these, what I'm calling the ferret fighters. They're basically long-range laser fighters that are speed 2 to kind of help scout around, because I haven't quite finished my scouting yet of the immediate neighborhood. And I can also use those to kind of check on how many missile bases the Silicoids have at that ocean world and at some of the others, in case I want to go attack. So those can be kind of useful. And it's just icing on the cake if I can fit a laser on them as well by this point. So I am making my way slowly towards neutron pellet guns and weapons. I'm still using old lasers and heavy lasers at this point, which you can stretch that out a little bit farther if you get nuclear engines, because then that allows you to do that shoot and scoot strategy, as I mentioned. Now, if I hadn't gotten nuclear engines, which, by the way, I was able to seize that very luckily from my invasion of Paranar really early on, If I didn't have those, I would have to prioritize neutron pellet guns a little more heavily to get those online sooner. But that's let me, the nuclear engines have let me delay that a little bit and focus on other things, which is good. So just scouting around. I'm also getting some research going on computer tech for Battle Computer 3. I got ECM Mark 1 in the first rung for that, which is nice because it's really cheap and an easy way to progress. Okay, so same story here. You see the silicoids and the Sakura are still up for the vote. It's about evenly split, so that actually lets me vote for whoever I want to increase relations. Which, I thought that by voting for the silicoids, I could keep them on my good side. But as you see in a few turns, I guess it didn't really matter. They didn't think too much about that either way. They just see me as an obstacle and apparently would like to run me over, as you'll see here in a little bit. So, and you can already see some of their scouts trying to probe around, and there's an infernal planet in that nebula, that red star north of Paranar, and I've got a large ship guarding it, one of those heavy laser shooting scooters. That's what I should have named it. Really, the shoot scooter or something of that sort. Shooting and scooting, or I would have had to find a way to abbreviate that. But that's what I should have named that ship. Yeah. So I'm almost got the neutron pellet guns, which once I get that, that'll make me feel much better about going on the offense, because I'll actually be able to escort any nuke bombers that I build. And plus it'll give me, I think, the weapon tech to more surely fit all the stuff I would need onto my bombers, aka the inertial stabilizer is ideally what I would want as well. So I've got some laser fighters to help out. They're probably not even really necessary. My large cruisers could handle this perfectly fine with the missile bases. I'm probably, this is probably overkill for defense at this stage in the game, but, I'm being safe. So we're in the 2370s, in case you were wondering kind of the timeline of what's going on. So we just had the 2374 council vote just a little bit ago. So, yeah, this is about the time when you need a better weapon than lasers. Even if you're relying on the shoot and scoot strategy, those ships are expensive compared to how much firepower you actually get, and you're not going to be able to rely on that forever in any cost-efficient way. So, if you can start replacing those, replace the heavy lifting in your fleet with some small, nimble, hard-to-hit neutron pellet gun fighters around this point, that's usually a very good idea. Enemies will start showing up with class 2, class 3 shields, and neutron pellet guns make good work of those. With having the effectiveness of shields, and I think it's even rounded down. So even with like class 3 shields, it only counts as one layer of shielding. With the neutron pellet guns and the other weapons of that category, so it's a pretty good deal. So one nice thing about being at war with an enemy race early in the game, if you can avoid the initial onslaught, is the fact that they'll tend to steadily deplete their forces in these little trickling attacks, right? Where they always get a little bit too hasty and a little bit too ambitious, and they attack really before their forces are ripe. And they'll just keep doing this. They'll keep feeding little penny pockets of forces into the meat grinder. And what that means is they're not building up, one big massive onslaught, which sometimes you'll run into. Now here's a tricky battle because I'm finally facing off against the Silcoids who like to build large ships. And usually with large ships, usually the AI likes to put some of those two-range, heavy weapons on their ships. So I'm facing off against another heavy laser ship right here, which I can get 2 volleys in for every volley that they get if I do the shoot and scoot just right. And I was able to kill 2 of their large ships with my 1 ship, which, once again, the Mrrshans, that's part of, their attack bonus helps you do that. Might not seem like much of an advantage, but it accumulates when you get to hold on to your force and accumulate your force throughout the game and not have to constantly replace losses. It's actually kind of an economic benefit, really. Yeah, what was I talking about? Before I was rudely interrupted by the Silicoids in their large laser ship. So yeah, you want NPGs, around this point. Definitely want to get those online. So you see, I'm actually I've made peace with the Clacons, mainly from donating a bunch of technology to them, and it's been a good investment because now they're up at calm relations, and I was able to trade for improved eco restoration. I had to trade them inertial stabilizer, but they're a 2-planet empire. I'm not too worried about them using it against me, employing it all that effectively, to be honest. So I was very happy to boost my economy in that way. So that was a good trade-off. Even, looked like donating to them, all that. I must have donated like 3 or 4 techs to them. Low-level techs, to be sure, but it was all I had, really. So I was trading away almost all my advantages to just get peace with them. But thankfully, I still had inertial stabilizer I could trade with them for improved eco and really come out ahead there. So what am I doing here? I'm basically designing a placeholder ship that I can use to accumulate spending on ships, and then I can switch that over to MPG fighters or nuke bombers at the last second whenever I see the need to, and then whenever it's often convenient to do that, to wait until you get another tech breakthrough if you're waiting on a technology to drop. Make sure your forces are the most up to date as possible. So that's what I'm doing there. And Silicoids are trying to probe my secondary world of Proxima. So I think I've got some missile bases there and building a few little laser fighters to distract them. And here's the battle. So they're bringing along a ship that's mainly Gatling lasers, which in fact this ship would probably retreat if I didn't have those little laser fighters to kind of taunt them. I don't know if that's listed as one of the AI exploits. I know the missile trick is probably an exploit where you use really outdated missiles to yo-yo the AI back and forth. But I don't know about, I think that's a legitimate tactic to have some weak ships to kind of taunt the enemy fleet into thinking that they can do some damage. Because it's really a fine line of what counts as a taunt or what counts as just having a pathetic fleet that, whether on accident even, that the AI would like to try to destroy. So I was able to defend Proxima, but you see I'm at war. I'm actually at war with Dalkari. I think the Silicoids by this point. So I think right now I'm getting the idea to go after Bootis, which is that ocean world. I'm building up my ship production ahead of time in preparation for that. Which I don't have up-to-date scouting information on Bootis, so I don't know what they have waiting for me. I'm pretty sure I send out a little scout fighter to go check any time here. If you're wondering, it's just to give you an update on the timeline. This is about the year 2380. So, spies destroying factories. Gonna chase that little ship away before it decides to bring a colony ship along with it. Maybe it'll engage me in combat and lose. So I'm pretty sure one of my shooting scooters can handle that. Since I killed 2 in the other battle recently. So worlds are starting to industrialize. I've got 6 worlds now. That's pretty good. Checking to see how far some of these planets are. Because I'd like to, if I could, just simply bomb out that that planet Laie. It's a radiated, ultra-rich world. It's a world I'll never use anytime soon. But meanwhile, the silicoids will be making very fine use of it, building up probably huge fleets with it. So if I could just bomb it out of spite, that would deprive them of some production potential. So I'm feeding my new planets with reserve funds from Paranar. See, I've got, my first 3 planets industrialized, but those 3 top planets are a long way from getting there. They still have to terraform too. And I still don't have neutron pellet guns, so that's kind of crimping my plans for any aggression right now. Kind of getting unlucky with waiting on those percentages to pop. So I'm scouting that's the Bullrathi, one of the Bullrathi worlds. There's more reserve spending. Fast forwarding just a little bit. So here's an incoming fleet. Nothing too scary though. Paranar is pretty well defended. Fortunately, I've got to defend 2 planets at this point, Proxima and Paranar. So now I've got sublight drives, almost in the percentages. So, which will be really nice if I'm planning to go on the offense. So that will, especially getting the early propulsion upgrades make such a big difference. If you think about the fact that going from retro engines to nuclear engines is double the speed, right? It cuts the travel time in half. And then even going from nuclear to sublight is plus 50% speed, cutting the travel time by a third, I guess. So, beyond that, there start to be diminishing returns. What's really the difference between impulse engines and ion engines? It's, if you can get ion engines, it's nice, especially for the maneuverability. But really anything fusion drive and above is ideal, and even sublight drives are serviceable for doing invasions because they, most importantly, make sure your transports go at least at warp 2. So a lot of times for early aggression, the bottleneck is not so much weapons or ship production capacity, but your strategic speed, how long it takes your ships and your transports to get where they need to go. And the reason why that's a problem is because a lot can change in 5, 6, 7 turns. The enemy can get new technologies, it can show up with a new fleet out of nowhere, and it, I've been burned. I know pretty much any Master of Orion player who plays on Impossible has gotten burned at least a few times with sending these fleets off, wishing them well. Oh, there's Battle Computer Mark III. Which unfortunately, all I have is Mark IV available at the next rung. But I'll take it. But yeah, when you send your ships off and your transports off and wave goodbye and wish them well, and then 8 turns later they show up, and in the meantime the enemy has brought the cavalry in and with new tech and new designs and completely routed your designs that were sufficient to beat their old fleet, but now they have a new one. That's really frustrating. So in a lot of ways, getting past retro engines and getting at least nuclear engines or preferably sublight engines is nice for doing any sort of invasion that's not just right on your doorstep. And if I'm going to invade Boötis, that's 6 parsecs away. It might even be 7 from Paranar. I'd like to, have sublight transports heading there. So I'm anticipating my aggression. I do swing that trade for hand lasers. I don't mind trading the Clacons, some terraforming. They're my friends as of now. I'm looking to see what the Silicoids have. They have class 5 shields, all right, which that's not ideal. Now I'm going to check and see what the Alkari have, since I'm at war with them too. Might as well find out. But if need be, if the Alkari aren't an ideal target, if I want to go after the Silicoids, I can make it work. All right, class 2 shields plus class 5 planetaries. It's not ideal for using nuclear bombs, but it can be done if you bring enough, especially with the Mrrshan attack bonus where most of your bombs will hit. Beyond that, I wouldn't go beyond that. Like, for example, if they have class 3 shields plus class 5 planetary, then you're really cutting it close because most of your bomb damage is going to be nullified. You're looking at shielding of 8. And, so you need to roll a 9, 10, 11, or 12 on your nuclear bombs to get any damage through at all. You're really stretching it at that point. And, class 4 shielding plus class 5, that's... No. Your hopes of using nuclear bombs at that point are gone. But, class 2 plus 5, so 7, level 7 shielding, it's right there on the borderline of being doable, depending especially on how many missile bases they have. And here in a second, I'm going to get some information on Boötis and see just how many missile bases they have and what exactly we're looking at here if we want to go after it. And here I'm building my large ship husk to get those resources stockpiled for when sublight pops. So I can plow that immediately into nuke bombers, fast-moving nuke bombers, and neutron pellet gun fighters. And, neutron pellet gun fighters, especially if I put a inertial stabilizer on them, and with the Mrrshan attack bonus, they're going to be relevant for a long, long time. I won't have to... I can keep that design around for a long time. So here's me developing my... See, I can just barely fit a nuclear bomb, inertial stabilizer, and good engines onto it so I can get 3 moves. So that's exactly what I need. So now I'm just waiting to stockpile a little bit more resources to make that a reality. So here's a decent attack, not too bad. The enemy's still sending me those penny packets of trickling in the forces. Which, like I said, being at peace with an AI is nice in the early game, but a lot of times that means that they've been stockpiling a fleet since early on, and if you're lucky, the fleet will be obsolete or will have some Achilles heel that you'll get a technology later on to deal with just in time. But, I've seen games where the AI just stockpiles like little fusion bomb fighters for 50 turns, and you might not quite have the shielding to deal with them even later in the game if you get unlucky with the planetary shields. And boom, suddenly they go from peace to war, and they show up with this huge stack of bombers all at once. Whereas if you had been fighting them all along, they would have been trickling them in little digestible packets. So I'm not I'm not too negative towards the idea of early warfare with the AI, as long as you're not jeopardizing your council vote, and as long as you can survive the initial onslaught. Um, it's not a bad thing. So here I'm building some fast nukers, is what I'm calling them. 248 should do it. I ran the calculations, and Boötis, I think I saw, has about 8 or 9 missile bases. It's just starting to get, well defended. If I were to wait too much longer, it's probably going to max out at something like 25, 30 missile bases after they terraform it a little bit more, and that's too much, especially with their shielding. That's I would have to amass thousands of nuke bombers to deal with that, or maybe at least 1,000, I would say. Maybe not thousands, but at least 1,000. That's, and by the time I did that, it would take probably decades, and they'd have even better shielding technology. So, them only having, I think, 8 or 9 missile bases at Boötis is just riding right on the edge of being feasible. And I'm kind of cutting it close with the timing. Ideally, I would have liked to pull off this sort of invasion, what I would call, I guess, a stage or a phase 2 invasion, where you try to actually invade and take over their factories and technology before they get too many missile bases built up. Ideally, I'd like to do this sort of invasion when they have maybe 1 or 2 missile bases. As soon as you see a missile base go up, you start getting it ready. But I was waiting for Sublight to pop, Actually, I'm still waiting for Sublight to. So I went ahead and built the fast nukers with nuclear engines, which is not ideal, but I'm feeling like I can't wait any longer. They're going to be building another missile base every couple of turns, and so it's really now or never here to prove this Pouncer strategy, to prove it right, that it can pay off. So I put a little investment into computer tech, battle computer Mark IV. Now I'm putting it into plantology to get that controlled toxic online. I think there's 2 planets I can, 2 I think, that I can colonize in my area with that. The Inferno world right north of Perinar, and there's a world off to the far northeast that I can get. Yeah, see, that's too many missile bases, so that planet is off limits. But Boötis, on the other hand, I think I can get there just in time. Let me fast forward a little bit. Let's do a little research micro. Still at peace with the Clacons, which is nice. Not having to worry about them hitting my flank while I'm overextending myself to go grab this ocean planet, Boötis. So I'm bringing a couple of those large shooting scooters along with some neutron pellet gun fighters. And actually, the Alkari, I don't know why they wanted to sign peace and give me deep space scanner, which is really nice. Gives me a little extra security to see what the enemy fleets are like orbiting some of those nearby planets. A little bit more advanced warning, which is really nice. I was sending little laser fighter scouts to check out their planets, so maybe they interpreted that as an attack. Even though I retreated, maybe that intimidated the bird brain. I have no idea what they were thinking there, but hey, I'll take it. So now I'm just at war with the silicoids, and I'm about to pounce on them. That's pretty much an ideal situation. And pretty much everyone else hates the silicoids, so this is going to boost my relations very well if I can pull this off. That's another nice thing about being an aggressive early game attacker is it allows you to kind of control or set the terms for how the diplomatic situation is going to turn out. You're not so much just hoping that turn after turn your neighbor who's neutral or relaxed towards you is not just going to randomly declare war. Whereas if you bomb their enemies a few times, you can bring them up to affable, at which point the chances of them randomly declaring war on you are very, very low. So it's kind of an insurance policy, as it were. So this is a tough battle here. Look at that. They've got 15 heavy blast cannons, a bunch of other random lasers on that. And that's a huge ship. All right, 600 hit points. So thankfully I brought along 54 neutron pellet gun fighters with some really good evade. So otherwise I would not be able to beat this thing. And doing the shoot and scoot once again. Thankfully, it's more interested in trying to shoot down my bombers, which there I just cleared out half of the missile bases at Boötis, and didn't lose too many of them so far. Of my bombers, that is. So thankfully, sometimes I'm trying to distract them, by the way, with these little random fighters. Take some of the pressure off of my bombers, which are really important. So boom, there go the missile bases, which I think I was even able to outrun all the missiles. If you have bombers that have 3 movement at this stage in the game, you can often outrun. If the enemy is just Hyper-V nuclear missiles or Hyper-V missiles or even Hyper-X, you can outrun that stuff. So thankfully they're still trying to go after my bombers, probably because if I wanted to, I could just keep bombing their planet into smithereens if I wanted to, which so they're here. Finally they start targeting my actual ships, and you see in one volley they took out one of my large ships. So now I'm going to scoot well away, and actually I've created a little blockade so they couldn't even get past my fighters there. But I had enough neutron pellet gun fighters to finish that huge ship off. So not only have I cleared out the missile bases and prepared the way for transports, but I also killed off a huge ship of theirs. So that was a huge silicoid investment down the drain. And what did I lose? I lost 1 cruiser and about 10 neutron pellet gun fighters, and of course some bombers too. But those are expected to be expendable. All right, so I think I can hold this, especially if I send in reinforcements like I'm doing here. So this is looking good. And plus, we just bombed the silicoids, and everyone hates the silicoids in this game right now at this point. So see them up to amiable with the clack-ons. So I'm queuing up the transports. And for these initial invasions, you really basically need every planet to be chipping in. Sometimes even just sending half of the population, even though it's not going to grow back immediately. You just need everything, because if you can conquer a planet, it's more than going to pay itself off in terms of technology and factories and strategic positions. So actually I'm going to stop it here. This is a good stopping point. I'll show this battle here, and then I'll stop. Looks like the silicoids have come to play with another design. This is at Boötis, where our fleet is stationed, and you see we've added to our. Well, I've reinforced my my fleet covering this planet with a few more of these MPG fighters, and then some of these a new design of MPG fighters that have slightly better evade. I think they have a defense of 7 because they're using sublight drives plus inertial stabilizer. So that's going to be hard to hit. And assuming, cross my fingers, hope that this thing does not have repulsor beam or some nonsense like that this early in the game. Which, by the way, if you're wondering the timeline, we're in the year 2394 right now. So, you know, conceivably the AI could be putting together some repulsor ships around this point. You know, pretty soon they might be showing up. Hopefully this is not one of them. And it isn't. It just has anti-missiles and has a whole bunch of lasers, but it doesn't have a great attack level. It's got an attack level of 2, so it's actually only going to be hitting 5% of the time against my little nimble NPG fighters. You know, so even with all those lasers, it's not going to do hardly anything. And it's slow as dirt, so I can even take pot shots at it with my shooting scooter, possibly. If I, especially since I have the initiative, I can wait for it to pull up. Actually, wait, can I? No. It would be too risky. Actually, what I can do is form kind of a blockade with my fighters and bombers, and since the enemy ship only has a movement speed of 1, it won't be able to easily get past the blockade, and I can kind of duck in and out with my heavy cruiser. Take little pot shots at it like that, and it's gone. So those little MPG fighters are tough, right? They mean business. They do some work at this stage in the game, especially with good engines and maneuverability, and with the Mrrshan attack bonus. We just shredded that huge silicoid design. So we've got the transports on the way, and I'll kind of leave you all in suspense until next time to see how this invasion pans out, and can we win the ground combat for Bootis and really make a breakthrough here in our Pouncer strategy as the Mrrshans. Find out next time.